Mr. Dowdy from the California Federation of Teachers. Nice to see you.
Good afternoon. So I'm Brett Dowdy. I'm a teacher in Costa Mesa, a member of CalSTRS, and also here on behalf of the California Federation of Teachers. My comments are related to the reports which the board received in October at the San Diego Service Center related to climate change, as well as to the ALM study which you just approved. And what the persons who were not able to go to San Diego to see that excellent presentation is to know that there was a very strong economic indicators that could directly tie into pieces and parts of the allocation. There were recommendations about how there are economic factors related to climate change in real estate, within crop yields, within energy companies, all sectors. And so I know that the STRS board is receiving that information and processing it, because this is your first meeting since receiving that report. Also, there was a report on the governance and policy issues of how you can shape your investment strategies. So knowing that you're changing the allocations of how you're moving into real estate and global equities, and knowing that you're probably working on both of these things simultaneously, what we would ask is that we be careful about putting the cart before the horse. It's probably most important to get those policies and governance issues and knowing what criteria you have for your ASG issues in place first, before we start actually doing the work of changing these investments over the next few years. I'm sure you're going to be speaking to most of these issues throughout the rest of the next couple of days. So, there may be elements of this that come out on the next agenda item, or tomorrow, or perhaps Friday. So if you're able to just help articulate how these two different projects, how maybe their timelines come together in terms of as you do your work, that would be great. Within CFT, as you well know, we are very active and interested in trying to minimize the effects of climate change. We are very active and interested in educating our public about the dangers of climate change and trying to help us as young people to adults be more effective citizens. So we are willing to be partners with you in this effort. We may be able to move things more quickly than the board may be able to, but we want to recognize the excellent work that the STRS board, the reports they've been receiving. We want to recognize how they're integrated together, and we urge you to move as quickly as you are able in creating the policies to help create positive change for our nation as well as our globe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dowdy. Lita Blank, followed by Max Flint.
Good afternoon. Just a year ago, I retired as president of United Educators in San Francisco, the teachers union in San Francisco. Today, I'm speaking to you as an individual, as a retired literacy teacher who taught for more than 30 years in San Francisco's Mission District. As a stakeholder in STRS, I believe that STRS has not taken seriously enough how risky fossil fuel investments are. Funding fossil fuel companies to extract new resources when the current industry will have to keep 80% of current reserves in the ground does not make financial sense. Current retirees and future retirees depend on STRS to make sound financial decisions on our behalf. What's more, as someone who dedicated her career to helping young children prepare themselves to be productive members of society, it saddens me that many of my students do not believe that there is a sustainable future for them. CalSTRS should not provide funding for the destruction of the planet. I urge you, as you move forward with your allocation plan, to divert from the fossil fuel industry. Shouldn't CalSTRS be part of the solution and not part of the problem? Thank you.
Followed by Rhea Moore Johnson. Max.
Good afternoon. My name is Max Flynn. I'm a UC Davis student, 20 years old. I'm in my third year. I am not involved in STRS personally. I don't have any particular stake or even appreciation for the difficulty of making changes. But I feel that having investments in fossil fuel companies has some really serious long-term ramifications for the teachers who will have their retirement supported through this fund and for the students who are being taught in these schools. As the world comes to terms with the ongoing global catastrophe that we are perpetuating, and with the indisputable fact that it is due to fossil fuel use, it's really impossible to know what's going to become of those companies and what's going to become of our futures. And the children who are in school now. I personally I'm questioning whether it is ethical for me to even have children and start a family over concern for the world that I might bring them into. I understand that this is really difficult to tackle, but I feel that we need to do everything we can right now to stop supporting the companies that might be destroying our planet. And I personally would like to live in a world where I would want to bring children into this great nation. By staying invested in fossil fuel companies, you are impinging upon California teachers' rights to a secure retirement and upon California students' rights to a secure future. Thank you.
Briar Moore Johnson, and then Megan Phelps.
Hello, my name is Freya Moore Johnson. I'm 18 years old and I'm also a student at University of California, Davis. And again, there's a lot of subtle intricacies that go into making decisions like this, but I wanted to give the perspective of a college student at UC Davis. So UC Davis is often called an eco-hub. As you know, the UC system is already divested from fossil fuels. Granted, it was for financial reasons. But I wanted to talk about some of the measures that students are encouraged to take in order to reduce their individual carbon footprint. This includes biking everywhere, taking really quick showers, and reducing consumption of meat and dairy, even at the cost of our own bank accounts, which, as you know, as college students, aren't very full. We're often taught to feel ashamed when we neglect these practices. But is it us, a group of young people with limited say in these socio-political matters, who should be feeling ashamed? How much difference do we really make? We are forced to wonder. We alone are not enough. We need you to support us. For your children, your nieces and your nephews, and their children. And as my peers have stated, it's about to be too late. Please hold yourself accountable and divest from the fossil fuel industry. The public is watching. Listen to what we have to say beyond this hour of public comment. Please make the right choice. Thank you so much.
Phelps, and then Dennis Matthews. Megan, and then Dennis.
Hello, my name is Megan Phelps. I'm also a student at UC Davis. And I wanted to talk to you about my appreciation for teachers and how when I was a little girl, we would have lockdown drills at my school. And it scared me because my parents weren't there to protect me and I felt vulnerable. And I remember in 5th grade, my teacher told me a story of a principal laying his body down to protect students from bullets. And I trusted that my teachers would do anything to protect my right to a future. A future that included seeing the world's beauty, finding a meaningful career, and most of all, most important to me was creating a family. And now, instead of a lockdown, it's the climate crisis. And just like before, my parents aren't here to protect me. And just like before, I'm faced with the fragility of my future and the future of my dreams, like starting a family. But this time it's not a drill. And this time I'm questioning whether teachers are willing to protect my right to a safe future. So I'm asking you to defend the futures of young people like me and those even younger and more vulnerable than I am. Teachers have always been more than educators. You've been the creators of our safety, and I ask that you please divest from fossil fuels to maintain our right to a livable future. Thank you.
And then Hannah, Dennis, and then Hannah Gaylocker.
Okay. Hello, I'm Dennis, I'm 20 years old, and I'm also a student at UC Davis. And when you assess the risk of the different assets, in my opinion, you have not taken seriously enough how risky fossil fuels investments are for your fund. If we burn the reserves these companies own, we produce like 5 to 6 times more carbon dioxide than we are allowed to emit in order to keep global warming below 2 degrees Celsius. We simply cannot and we will not allow this to happen. So, although these companies try to greenwash themselves, they don't want any change. That's why BP ExxonMobil, Shell, Total, and Chevron spend a combined $200 million a year for lobbying and many more millions for think tanks and organizations that are spreading fake news and denying climate change. Do you want to fund the spread of false information and the immoral influence on our politicians? Each one of us has taken individual steps to decrease our carbon footprint, but we cannot solve this crisis alone. We need you. So we, as the Sunrise Movement Davis, ask you to be on the right side of history. Thank you.
Anna, and then Jane Foster.
Hi, my name is Hannah Delacaye. I am a third-year student at UC Davis studying ecology. And I just wanted to say that now, though, you may be able to ignore us and our actions that we take and delegate our time, we will continue to push back and persevere because, you know, we can't ignore the research that clearly shows that the money in this fund is going to be lost by staying invested in the destruction caused by the fossil fuel industry. And soon, you won't have a choice but to divest, but it's going to be too late then. Our actions may seem hostile now, but your actions staying invested in fossil fuels is literally costing our future. Not only are you losing money, but you're also losing time. The UN Intergovernment Panel on Climate Change concluded that we just have 10 precious years to make serious changes, and we have to decrease CO2 emissions by next year. The divestment of $6 billion is going to take years, and by the time that even I graduate and try to make a difference in my field, it's going to be too late. The time is now. The children in your schools are begging you to listen, and they're going to face a dramatically different planet than what you had. So let's not take any more time from their future and from our future. Let's hold ourselves accountable and divest from fossil fuels now. Thank you.
Jane Fosberg, followed by Richard Gerland.
CalSTRS, you have watched California burn, and yet you continue to invest in the fuels that fan the flames and cost lives and cost the state billions of dollars. You defend your decision to engage with fossil fuel companies while your loyalty to the industry has cost the fund at least $5.5 billion. And your decision has cost each and every California teacher over $5,500. You have a divestment policy that includes 21 risk factors, but it's not worth the weight of the paper it's printed on, since you have refused to invoke the policy even when the necessary criteria have been clearly met in this case. You ignore the call from thousands of school teachers and college instructors who for years have told you that they do not want their pension invested in the destruction of civilization. You attend CTA meetings and conferences and put the fear of God into its members by telling them that divesting from fossil fuels would negatively affect their pensions. Will you tell them about the losses that not divesting has caused the fund? But worst of all, you have heard the desperate pleas of young children as they beg you to lessen the pain and destruction that will affect every aspect of their lives. You've witnessed their courage in coming to call on you to do right by them. Believe you me, it does take them courage. And yet, you ignore their pleas, offer platitudes, and prevent them from being on public record even with parental consent. You flip them the bird. You've had your chance to be the leaders, to tell the teachers that you are truly concerned about their retirement, to reassure the young people that yes, you get it, their future is worth fighting for. Instead, you have considered us the nuisance, while the fossil fuel industry relentlessly fights for its survival, all while bringing us way too close to the tipping points, beyond which the game is over for the planet. I wish our students' lives meant as much to you as your loyalty to big oil. You cannot continue to invest in fossil fuels and claim you are concerned about the climate crisis and the lives of these children. CalSTRS, you need to publicly announce divestment from fossil fuels to maintain the trust of CalSTRS members and to help secure a livable planet for our students.
Boy, that's hard to follow. My name is Richard Gerling. I'm here from the United Educators of San Francisco. I traveled from San Francisco to this meeting. It's the first time I've been to a STRS board meeting. That's how important this is to me. I retired 2 years ago, so I'm a member. I'm here as a member. After having taught economics in public schools for over 30 years and earning my master's in philosophy and economics. From my economic knowledge and additional evidence from Fossil-Free California's report showing billions lost due to fossil fuel investments, I've concluded that continuing investment in companies that produce fossil fuels is doomed to financial failure as well as ecological extermination. Oil companies have trillions invested in underground resources that they must exploit to remain profitable. The problem is when these resources are exploited, they destroy our chances of survival. This is absolutely contrary to the objectives of STRS providing for the futures of teachers. It is no excuse that we are transitioning away from fossil fuels. Investments must end immediately for the sake of our futures, and positive alternatives must be found for our investments. UC has voted to divest its endowment and retirement funds from fossil fuels. As STRS is another large investor and others look towards it, your decisions have consequences. Make those consequences positive. Lastly, as a member of STRS, I want to hear the voices of young people who have the most to lose. I want a world to hear what young people care about their future and are willing to take the time to pressure organizations such as STRS to stop thinking of the bottom line in the short term and solely in monetary terms. I am honored to be here with them. Having a great deal of money in an uninhabitable world will do no good. Let the voices of our young people and STR members like myself who are objecting to these irrational investments be heard.
Gore, followed by Karen Guma. Not here. Karen?
I thought I was coming after item 5. Item 4.
Okay. So I'm going to probably make a lot of enemies standing up here, but I hope that's not true. I'm not speaking as part of CFT, I'm speaking as a college professor. I've taught economics for the last 35 years, and I was also very, very involved in the anti-apartheid movement for South Africa, up to and including civil disobedience, somewhat like we had earlier today, which I thought was very nice. But one of the lessons of the anti-apartheid movement was divestment didn't work. Colleges all around the United States divested from South Africa, and it had no impact whatsoever. What started to have an impact was when the visibility of apartheid in South Africa was raised enough that we used the other two halves, or 2/3, of what is oftentimes called the BDS movement. boycott, divest, and sanction. What brought down apartheid in South Africa, first and foremost, was the people of South Africa. But second to that, when companies started boycotting going to South Africa, when banks decided to stop lending to South Africa, that's when things changed. I'm absolutely excited and wondrous of all of these young people who are so dedicated to climate change. And I agree with them 100%. Climate change is an existential threat to life on this planet. What I find distressing is that they're using all of their energy and all of their excitement to push on the tool that has the least impact. If they had all of the same energy and they were telling banks in the United States to stop lending to fossil fuel companies, that would have an impact. When they convinced people to stop buying things that are reliant on fossil fuel, like never order anything from Amazon. The carbon footprint of Amazon is enormous. Go to a brick and mortar store. Don't buy from Amazon, right? Boycott and sanction. That's what works. In the last 3 years, between colleges and pension funds, more than $8 trillion has been divested from fossil fuel companies. And it has made no impact. $8 trillion have been divested. When STRS decides to divest a couple more million here, the oil companies are not even going to notice it. We have to do something now. You're right, we have less than 10 years. We can't wait and learn that divestment isn't the right tool, other things are. Because that's what happened in South Africa. It took more than 10 years for students to realize